Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it is 4 o'clock and we are here to have a meeting of the ad hoc committee on the request for transfer of property to Habitat for Humanity. I just welcome everybody that's here from the community, but I want to remind you that this is a council committee and there will not be public comment at the meeting. I think the mayor has some comments to start us off.
Yeah, so for today's conversation, kind of wanted to take a step back. So in front of the committee members is a little bit of an overview of the property that's being discussed. So first of all, it is the two parcels, about 26 acres total. The city did purchase them in April of 2008 for about $150,000. The Hancock County auditors 100% appraisal value of the lots is about $81,000. Obviously, that's just the appraised value. That's not an actual like market or sale value. They're currently zoned The northern parcel is zoned R2 medium lot residential, and the southern property is zoned R3 small lot residential. The majority of the surrounding neighborhood is R3 small lot residential, and the Finley land use plan has the site as a multifamily residential. It's not within the 100-year floodplain. The city currently farm leases this property out, receiving about $4,500 a year. That varies from year to year based off of the bids. I did include Finley, the zoning map with those properties outlined, as well as then the land use map and the floodplain map. So I think based off of the conversation, the kind of initial, so first of all, let me take a step back. And obviously this conversation came up. Habitat had reached out and said, hey, we have this vision and opportunity. We've been looking for land, and you guys have property that currently is underutilized. And so I said, well, let's have the conversation with council. Obviously, they did the committee of the whole meeting a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago now, I believe, and kind of presented the idea. What I think is really kind of a more important place to start with is, what does city council see as the purpose of this land moving forward, regardless if it is habitat involved or not? I think we need to decide first and foremost if this is a spot that we see residential property going, if we want to keep it as farmland, or if we see it as commercial or industrial. Now, based off of the zoning map, the area, I believe that residential is the most appropriate use. Obviously, I don't think that this is a spot for commercial or industrial, especially given, which, by the way, this is being live streamed, so it will be available on YouTube and people can view it currently. I think, residential is the more appropriate. I know some of the concerns that have been brought up by the neighborhood are just increased traffic, increased people in the neighborhood. Drainage has been a large concern. I know Jeremy and Rob were out at the West Park meeting a couple of weeks ago talking about storm sewers and the plans that are out there that we've been working through for the last 5 or 6 years and that we're continuing to work on. I would note that there's not storm sewers in every part of Finley. There is natural drainage that occurs. Any work that would be done in this area, whether it's by a private developer, by Habitat, by the city, by anyone, would have to meet our flood and detention and retention requirements, which have increased. We increased them multiple times. Most recently, they have to be able to maintain, Jeremy, so I don't say it wrong, 25-year storm and outlet at a 5-year.
They had to detain, the site has to detain a 100-year storm, and it has to be outletted at a 5-year storm rate. And then also any stormwater coming in that was already existing, going through the site, they have to accommodate for that too. They cannot block that off and only contain their own. So it would be a 100-year storm that they contain within their own site and an output of 5.
Yeah. So said another way is, this development would not be able to negatively impact any surrounding area. That's part of the engineering that occurs. But as I said at the beginning, I think the kind of starting point conversation for council is, what do we see the use of this land being? Do we just want it to continue to farm and hold it in our back pocket? Do we want to do something with it? And then we can kind of go from there on what that would look like. Well, yeah, I'm opening, we need input, right? If you guys say we just want to hold it for forever, then fine, that's a direction we can go. Personally, I think it should be residential development. And then we can dig into the meat and potatoes of what does that look like.
I concur that residential development would be the only kind of development that's a good fit for this property. But the question is, how do we get there? I feel that donating this land, I'm conflicted on that. It is a large ask. And is that a proper way to handle this land, is to donate it? Granted, to a great group. Habitat has done a great job in the community. So I'd say I'm kind of torn a little bit on it.
I guess I would say, could we, as a government entity, utilize the grants that say Habitat would be available to them to place in the infrastructure and then parcel it out ourselves and then sell it and get, that way.
Yeah, so there are lots of different options, right? So from a development standpoint, if we say, yes, we want to see this as residential, we could go through the planning process. We could put out the layout of where we would want to see infrastructure. One of the thoughts as Rob, Jeremy, Jacqueline, and I were kind of thinking through it is, you know, if we said, okay, city council says, yes, we think this is good, you know, to Habitat's credit, they kind of already have a potential layout of the area. And we could say, okay, we're gonna parcel it, and then we're going to auction off or through the port, transfer properties to entities. And say, okay, we're gonna start with this section and we're going to sell the parcels for whatever dollar amount we think is appropriate. Now that's,
With a home price cap or a home value cap.
you can get into lots of things. We could say, okay, we're willing to sell this many parcels for $1,000 a piece if the property developed is under $250,000. We could also say, you know what, we do think that we need some affordable housing. Habitat's best positioned to develop those, and we want to gift so many of the parcels to Habitat. We can say, hey, we want to develop, we're going to put in all of this infrastructure over 10 years. The city's going to take on that responsibility, and we're going to bring in the grants that are available to us, whether it's our critical infrastructure grant, CDBG, OPWC. We have different pots of money we can pull from. Now, doing a lower, the LMI qualifying properties, which typically the Habitat properties are, that then opens up a different pool of money. So we could say if 50% of the properties do meet that threshold, then we get access to additional funds to help offset that. From my standpoint, I think we would be able to go in and say, okay, we want this to be an R2 residential development. We are willing to phase in the infrastructure. We would say, here's the phasing. We're gonna start with this many parcels, and Habitat, we're gonna give you 5 parcels or 10 parcels in this phase, and then sell off the other ones. And once we've sold those, then we could move on to the next phase. And the developers get the benefit of the infrastructure being put in for all of them. We would have so many that are guaranteed to be low to moderate, help with some of the affordability gap that's occurring, but then also making them available to other developers who may be interested at other price points. Now, we could even go a step further and say, you know, if we don't get the response that we're looking for from private developers, then we could say Habitat gets a right of first refusal if the lots don't sell within 3 years or whatever that may look like. So there's a lot of flexibility. Obviously, like if we're trying to say we want so many to go to a certain entity, we would have to use the Port Authority. Otherwise, they would have to go to straight auction.
I mean, I guess I would be willing to hear your perspective, Jeff. I mean, what would you think to say if there were a ratio of, say, if we did parcel it out and say, because you kind of come from this world, right? So for say 2 or 3 Habitat homes for every 6 or 7 private homes. I mean, what would your thought be on that? So it cuts that 68 figure down, obviously, but.
Well, and that 69 parcels is based off of an R3
Okay,
lot
so
density.
it would,
And so if we switch to,
Okay.
and it would be our recommendation, we switch to R2 to address some of the concerns with spacing. I know zoning had mentioned some of the concerns of the neighborhood with the folks parking and not having enough space for parking and parking over the sidewalks or different frustration points there. So I think that would help alleviate some of the density concerns, some of the traffic concerns, but would also still, and we haven't platted it out to know, but I would guess you'd still probably get 50 homes in that area with the detention, with some of the other amenities potential.
50 homes in R2.
Probably.
Ballparkish.
The people in the back can't hear your heads shaking.
Yeah, an R3 lot's typically 3,500 square feet, a R2 is typically 5,000 square feet. So the math probably 50, 55 max.
You can, in R1, you can get 4 per acre.
R1
So-
per acre.
That's our largest.
Yeah, so probably 6 per acre at,
So you think 6, Matt? Per,
but that's assuming the whole area, no
right,
road.
and we know that
Yeah.
can't be done
Yeah.
because of the water retention pond. It's gotta go in this thing, right? Which was gonna take up, Wendy, by year was at least what, 2 acres, 3 acres?
3 acres.
Yeah, 3 acres worth was gonna have to be water retention. And that's gonna have to be done regardless of what we do. Now, the density on that, does that change the water retention?
Yes. Yeah, that would change a little bit. I mean, it's not gonna be
Not
substantial.
Not like I'm put 10 more houses on.
Correct,
because,
no, it's, I mean, it's gonna be minimal. Maybe it won't have to be as deep type thing, but you're still gonna be
So
in that
essentially
footprint.
3 acres. so-
Yeah.
Okay.
Did the math, 48 parcels. 48 parcels. There.
Look at me, just off the top of my head, throwing numbers out.
I will, ever since we heard about this request from Habitat and going out and looking at this property and driving through it several times this weekend and going through the neighborhoods and was it Baker's Landing? Is that right across? Baker's Acres, I like the name, right across Carlin Street there and driving through that neighborhood. And I tend to agree that this needs to be residential. I don't think you all would have been very happy had we put the city warehouse there.
We would have.
Yeah, let's go.
I think both.
Don't speak for us.
So,
All right.
okay. So I would rather see it, do it residential. I think that we ought to take and look at what the mayor was talking about here, which was something new for us, was to put the infrastructure in first, recoup that cost later over time in the cost of the lots and or with the cost of the utilities potentially over time. And help and look at this as a way to spur on the type of housing that we need desperately in the city.
And another thought we did have on that is well, obviously, when you're selling off the lots, we would put that money towards it, right? The lots that were sold.
Right.
The others, we could have a minimal, well, we have rotary fees, but we don't
Right.
necessarily we could have an additional fee that's paid when they develop.
Right.
So we could do a couple things there as well.
Something just to be different than what we would normally do. when
Correct.
A new lot is planted.
Correct.
So, and then as far as Habitat is concerned, I'm agreeable, we look at, much like putting lots into this for them. I'm not sure what that density is, Wendy. I am not for all 68 of them. I think it's a great wish, but I don't think that's quite where we need to be at this point with this piece of property. So I think something down those lines would be acceptable and useful, quite frankly, to the city and fit in with the rest of the residential situation that's going on right now.
And something that I had mentioned previously to zoning was name, image, likeness is the wrong terminology, but make it fit, make the development fit with what's existing. Baker's Acres just happens to be my neighborhood. I live there. So just a thought. So it fits.
I think you mean aesthetics.
Yeah.
Right, like the homes, like just
These are
having,
college athletes, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's not necessarily the footprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I do my opinion since we?
Yeah, of course. That's your
Sure.
meeting.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you if you're going to say something else. I've just thought about this also while, since we heard about it, I have a problem with just giving, donating land away at the government level. Seems like that ought to be a personal choice, to make a donation to, and that's nothing against Habitat. I'm just not sure that's the role of government. So I talked to the mayor on Friday and she told me some of the ideas she's mentioned today. And I thought, I also wasn't sure about what I thought about an idea of an entire neighborhood of Habitat homes. So if we could, plat them out, do deed restrictions that the homes that are built can only be certain dollar value or whatever. I just think that since we need housing, there are other people that could use this housing that wouldn't qualify for Habitat for Humanity. You have somebody coming in that's new at Marathon or Cooper, if they're whoever they are now. somebody that works at Whirlpool and's been living at home, and hey, I finally got some money saved up, I could, get a starter home. And I hate to take away some housing whenever it says that we don't have it. So if we're gonna have 68, 50, whatever, homes out there, I'd like to not see it so segregated to one sector. I don't have a problem with some of them, but I'd really like to see it a mix. So that other people who wouldn't fit those qualifications could possibly have a home also. Similar to the fact that we were gonna try to get some nice apartment buildings for people starting out over on McPherson, which I know didn't pass the zoning thing, but maybe they can get something done over there. But we need something for the other sectors of society to find housing also. So that's kind of where I was. Grant, you got anything to say? I mean, I know you're not on the committee, but you want to speak? Nope.
I'm trying to think, I guess, didn't we see something similar to that in P and Z, where it was a mix up off of 99, where there was apartment buildings, single family homes, condos, it was kind of a mix. Maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, obviously the zoning would have to change, and I think that goes back to the density concerns. Additionally, because there is bedrock pretty shallow, you're not going to be able to get much vertical construction without a lot of cost. So I think most likely it's going to be single family slab, single story units out there, which I think, again, is more consistent with the neighborhood than multifamily.
I guess one of my concerns with residential development out there is the density, and I think this has been brought up by a couple. We don't want it so dense that it detracts, takes away from the neighborhood. I think if we do this smartly, I think this can work. We can get the additional housing. We can do so without hurting the current members of this neighborhood. I think we can make this positive for everybody involved.
Yeah, well, and R2 is less dense than the
Yeah.
existing. It's West Park's R3.
Have we ever done this before where we've just said, which we haven't really said yet, but that we're talking about, to just do all the infrastructure directly from the city? Because if this was developed by a construction company that had bought this land and was going to build a subdivision or whatever, they pay for all that, right? To get the water out to there and do the roads and everything?
It's a mix of both. This is more unusual, one, because we don't typically own large swaths of land like this. So I wanted to hear your thoughts specific to this property, but I do think that the infrastructure conversation then opens up a larger discussion. And I know we've kind of talked about it over the last couple of years with residential development. Right now, all of the tax incentives, all of those options are for multifamily, commercial, industrial development. There's not really any incentives or tax options for single family residential development. A way to do that then would be through the infrastructure costs, because obviously that kind of offsets and would be equitable across developers. So again, we were kind of brainstorming and have some thoughts that we can certainly discuss, but would pretty much be an opportunity where annually or on a rolling basis, we would open up for proposals from developers that are saying, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z on residential, family residential. We would then say, okay, we would look at all of them and say, council, which ones do we think are putting some dollars towards? And then we would have a payback structure where the city could do it upfront, assuming they meet certain criteria. And then, and they would do it upfront. And then, as long as they meet their standards, then we could reimburse them a portion of the development. So say they say, we're going to do this, we're going to develop it within 3 years. And they put in the infrastructure, they meet that, then we would reimburse them if they do it within 3 years, 75% of the cost of the infrastructure. And two reasons we would recommend that they would do it. One, they can typically do it at a lesser cost because they don't have prevailing wage restrictions, they don't have some of the bid requirements, those items. But two, obviously then it's easier if they don't meet their requirements, we're not out the money. Then you could go, okay, if they meet it within 3 to 5 years, maybe we look at a different reimbursement level, 5 to 7, and then anything over 7 years, they would just be wholly responsible. So I think that's a larger conversation, kind of going back to your point. That is not historically something we've done. I think it just is council looking at if it is something that we want to invest in and does it, provide a long-term payback?
I guess I had one other thought, just going back to the original question for the committee is the Habitat for Humanity request. Another thing where I'm coming from on, I like what the mayor said about doing a variety instead of an entire neighborhood of that. I know that they said they were going to try to get to where they're going to do 6 homes, which I think is, from what I understood, is more than what they were doing before. And there's like 68 properties, the way that it was described to us originally. So one, it's going to take you 10 years at best, 11, to get those homes built. And then we were told, which I understand the purpose behind that also, that Habitat for Humanity residents cannot sell those homes for 10 years. So it's going to take you a long time to get the homes that we could otherwise get if we brought other people in and could maybe, I don't do construction. I mean, I'm not saying you can get all 50 or whatever built in a year if you spread it out, but 2, 3, you talked about possibly in a residential. I think that would also be a plus. We need the housing instead of waiting 10 years. And then, for these people that I mentioned who wouldn't qualify for Habitat for Humanity, like the World, Goodyear, or Marathon, or a nurse at the hospital or a surgery center, whoever this might be, there's not going to be any turnover. I mean, even once they get built and it takes 10 years to build them, even if you move it along, it's 10 years before anything could become available for someone else. So I think that would also aid us in getting housing, because I think we could fill that development fast. I think, not my area, but I would just have to assume so. I think that would be a benefit to the citizens.
I guess I would say I'm intrigued by the parcel out idea. A healthy ratio of private and habitat. That would be something I'd be willing to look at.
No, I agree. I think somewhere probably in that 3-to-1, maybe 5-to-1 ratio, somewhere in that neighborhood would probably benefit, I think, everybody in this situation.
And then if Habitat is paying for a parcel, they have time to say raise that money or whatever the case may be.
So from what I hear, what we need to go back and work on is kind of a new game plan of what it would look like platted, how many properties that would be, kind of check in on the infrastructure costs that were kind of put together previously, and then put together a game plan on what we would see the parcel ratio as well as cost of those lots looking like.
We would charge,
And then-
well,
Correct.
the auction, I guess we can at least have starting, right?
Right, well, and I think it goes back to that, well, we would put together kind of the game plan of steps. If you say we're willing to donate this many to Habitat for then this, or here's the cost to Habitat. Again, if we wanted to direct them, they would have to go through the Port Authority. Otherwise, Habitat would have to just buy on that auction. And then if we say we're gonna go to auction, then we just set a minimum price and then see what they go for. And then we would put together the plan on kind of the phasing, because what I would want to see is we could do an auction where we're selling parcels, multiple, single parcels, but I would want to do them in groups. That makes, so like, we're not, so if we only sell one phase of parcels, then we're not committed to putting infrastructure in for the whole area. We want them grouped.
I think it's 2 birds, 1 stone, and it's a healthy compromise.
For today, anybody else on the committee have comments? Okay, so since you came, and I know you've probably got something to say, we all on council have another meeting in about 20 minutes to get out of here to get to where we need to go. So, don't know if you have an appointed spokesperson or 2. Here.
Thank you for your time today. I'm Robin Welling. I'm president of the West Park Community Block Watch. I'm shaking because I didn't think we were going to speak here. I'm also secretary of our West Park. It's a brainchild group formed from our block watch. It is an anti-Hope Springs build group to stop the build in West Park. I know that sounds impressive, but heck, it's not. If you would have read the front page news, I'm somebody now. No, actually, I'm just an old lady who lives in an old family home trying to keep our little neighborhood and our affordable and safe for all of us. We are proactive on this bill because, first of all, it robs our neighborhood of most valuable commodity, our green space. It also infringes on our streets that the city declared unacceptable to handle more traffic when they put in a moratorium on apartment builds in our neighborhood in effect. Our gentleman had to quit building in 2006 and 2008 because we were told our streets could not take it, and we were now a residential family neighborhood only. Just starting into our third week of this campaign, we've had our first meeting, established a Facebook page, have almost 100 yard signs out, and in 3 days obtained over 250 signatures on the following petition. This is a petition we circulated. We want to stop Habitat for Humanity for building Hope Springs addition in West Park. Habitat is basically asking the taxpayer to fully fund 26 acres into a fully free developed housing subdivision. They want 68 homes, a park, and a community center. We pay for storm sewers we don't have and rely on our green space as natural drainage. Every roof, every inch of concrete and asphalt flirts with flooding in our area. Our streets are minimally adequate for existing traffic, let alone doubling it. All this increases hazards and safety. I shouldn't have looked up. Safety for our families. We're an old neighborhood with generational homeowners. We stay in West Park because of its unique charm. We are our own little community and appreciate what most of our parents built. We're not asking for curbs. We're not asking for sidewalks. And we stopped asking for storm sewers from the city of Findlay, even though we pay for them. That was not on our petition. We're only asking that you stop stealing our green space. We already welcome 24 Habitat homes, which is 43.6% of Findlay's Habitat builds. We have done our due diligence to them. It is time for Habitat to spread their joy into another area. This signatures from 250 is from Findlay, Ohio residents in 458. The last line is, I do not want Hope Springs addition built into our neighborhood. The mayor herself has put in an email to our group president, Jackie McGee, the following, and I quote, "You are correct. There is little to no funding for your general storm sewer system, especially since it's not required because of how much area is already built for natural drainage. Well, please stop stealing our natural drainage. Stop stealing our green space." I would also like to say it would have been more considerate of the city and its partners to approach the local residents on this impact before blasting the front page project on the front of the Courier. Please, Habitat, go spread your joy around elsewhere in Findlay. At this point, you are like a 3-day-old house guest. You're overstaying your welcome in West Park. Thank you for your time.
Robert, don't worry.
I also have, if you'd like to see what our petition was, I do have some for everybody if they'd like to have a copy. Go ahead, sir.
So, thank you for your comments. I'm trying to get your main points of contention. I get stealing green space.
Correct.
What else?
The traffic,
Okay, wait a minute. So
okay?
you say the traffic's gonna be too high.
The traffic's going to be too high.
This is on the other side of Carlin Street.
Does not matter. We have we have most of our streets cut right from Lime Avenue where everybody enters. We have 2 ways in our neighborhood. You come in Harrison or you come down Lime Avenue.
Right.
75% of our traffic comes through Harrison unless you live in low.
How many units are currently in West Palm?
How many houses? I hung them on 450 mailboxes, and that was not businesses.
450.
Correct.
Is that all the houses out there?
Oh, that's not counting apartments.
There's
Okay, how many
apartments,
apartments are out there?
Well, Randy Cunningham,
Okay, so 500,
500,
600?
let's say 500, let's say
So
500.
only 50 apartments?
I'd say that's
So you've got 500 people living out there now. Is that
correct.
ballpark correct?
500 residents.
500 residents.
Residents, with 4 or 5 people or 6 or 8, you don't know. Some of them are families that have more people in there than we do relatives.
Absolutely. Okay, so you're looking at 500 residences currently. And we're talking about 50?
68 houses.
That's if we go with the Hope Springs idea.
It makes no difference what you go with. If you go with 50, that's 50 cars, 100 cars, 150 more cars in our neighborhood darting down the streets. The last Habitat build was on Olney Avenue, which is a street barely passable. You have to pull in everybody's yard to pass on that street. It is a 1-lane alley street.
Okay.
Since we got that build, we used to have 1 house, then 2 houses. Now we have 6 houses and we're going to put in a paved parking lot. All them green spaces are taking up and causing flooding. At the end of Morical and Lime Avenue, we have flooding. At the end of Cary Avenue and Harrison, we have flooding because of the asphalt and the roofs.
Okay, so stealing green space and too much traffic.
Correct.
What else?
Well, we also have the whole thing that happens when we have some of the nice habitats. We have this guy here that has a beautiful habitat home, and we love our habitat neighbors. This is not against habitat. This is not against habitat. Look at me with them eyes all you want. It's not against
I just
habitat.
remember what you just said.
And I said, we don't want them because right here we have a beautiful habitat home. We host 43.6. If we put them habitats in it, we jump to 73.6% of West Park. We are West Park. That's how our ratio will go up.
Okay,
That is
go ahead
their
with your
total
point.
bill. This house habitat here, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. He's done bushes. He's a proud homeowner. This house over here is trashed. It was made for a grandmother and 3 children. And guess what? We have a drug son that's been busted several times. We got a guy in the wheelchair living in the garage, and there's trash all over, no drapes. And this poor guy over here, he's like, oh, what the heck am I doing? While we were canvassing, there's one on Logan Avenue. She has a beautiful habitat home. Just found out a new one's going in beside her. And she's like, my gosh, they're going to be looking at my neighbors in my kid's bedroom. I didn't know I was getting another house here. What are we going to do? It's going to be so close. It's not. It's what it brings with us. In 10 years, when the last habitat house is sold, that first one is selling and going on up to Hunter's Creek. That's in 10 years. In 10 years, you can sell your habitat home and you're moving on up. And so you get stuck with this trashed home. We're been told, well, I have siding on my house that hasn't been fixed. Habitat only watches this for the first year. My house was never complete. We've had people saying I was promised a driveway. I never got my driveway. We've had all kinds of complaints. My head is exploding with what we have learned over the past 3 days canvassing. 250 signatures in 3 days is a lot of houses to knock on. And we have a great committee.
May I
Oh,
make
go right ahead.
comments real quick? So first of all, Robin, with those concerns, I'm sure Wendy and Scott are listening to those, and I would appreciate if you could direct them to Habitat if there are issues that need resolved. I think that's the appropriate venue. Regarding zoning issues or property maintenance issues or drug activity, that can be any house.
I
And I
understand
know,
that.
and that happens in other neighborhoods, other people, it can be any of us, right? And so if that's an issue, and as you know, our team has been doing a lot of work out there. I know zoning has been out doing a lot of enforcement, trying to get things cleaned up. So I guess just one request I would make, and I know that we can get emotional and we can get protective, but I want you to be very aware that the other day, some of your neighbors were at a meeting with you and were extremely hurt by some of the comments made. Just like you said, right at the end, that those folks were able to sell their home and move to a new neighborhood. That's exactly what we want to see. Let me finish, please. That's exactly what we want to see. The purpose of Habitat for Humanity is to provide a stable environment with a supportive community and accountability to an outside organization to improve their lives. And so I just want us to all be very aware. we're taking a step back from that and having a broader conversation about the development. But I think we all need to be very sensitive that these are people trying to better their lives. They're not all gonna be successful, but we also need to be aware of how we speak about them.
May I defend myself since you just told me I was the bully of the block, basically?
I didn't say it was you, I said at the meeting.
Yeah. Well, when you come to a meeting that is anti-habitat, anti-build, and you sit there and you want to have a debate about, oh, I want to do this, oh, I'm a habitat owner, I want to do that. I politely ask, does anybody want to hear her opinion? One lady said yes. I said, would you two please go over there and have your meeting? Because that's not what this meeting is about. Any building project, any home that when you start selling them lots off as homes, we're still going to protest it. You have no place to store your city salt. Your city salt goes into the state garage and to the county garage. That's where your salt is stored. That's what that property was built for, was to put buildings there to store your salt. Your guys are still coming out to West Park to get your salt. Go ahead and develop it for the city like you purchased it for it and you promised it. None of us have a problem with that. If you want to do something out there, you've also already got the resource center out there. Why don't you put a doctor's office out there? Why don't you sell it to a doctor's office? Why don't you sell it to a dentist? Would anybody have a problem if we had a dentist or a doctor's office over there? No. Would anybody object if we have our city's garage over there?
Yeah.
Would everybody, because guess what? Same with McPherson. Those people would love to have a business there, because guess what? You come and you go and that's it. At 5 o'clock, the traffic's done. Every street in our neighborhood will be a drag strip. It already is. We just got 44 speed limit signs, and now we've got to promote a literacy sign in our neighborhood. Our literacy campaign in our neighborhood, because nobody knows how to read, because they're still speeding down our streets. Our guys from this city have been so inviting, so open, and so helpful to us. I can't express our pleasure with them. But we already have the flooding occurring from the habitat houses and the new builds put in. And if we have a subdivision back there, whether it's habitat, whether it's divided up, but I'll tell you one thing, if you think anybody will build a $400,000 house out on that lot and have a habitat house beside it, you're all mistaken. You're gonna get it exactly, you're gonna exactly reap what you sow.
So I just would make one additional comment regarding the drainage issue. I completely understand that concern. The detention and system that would be, any efforts in this area would actually help the capacity of the rest of the neighborhood. As you look at engineering, yes, and I know we're still working on the oil ditch issue. I know we've done some additional drainage items. I know we're working on storm sewers in a number of areas. So storm sewers are being addressed. I would also state though, I know we've had people call in when there's large rain events. The ground is meant, our backyards are meant to have water after a storm.
I never had water like that.
16 inches?
Never had water like that.
16
Yeah.
inches
In all the years I
like
lived
that.
out there,
Yeah.
never.
Maybe you people, we have invited you, and this was our thing. If other people could have spoke today, this was our thing. Please, we'll throw the money together. Let's get a van. Let's take you guys on a tour of our neighborhood. Let's show you what we don't have in our neighborhood. Let's show you what every other neighborhood has. We don't care about your sidewalks. We don't care about your curbs. Keep them. Guess what? We'll even back off on the storm sewer.
Exactly.
Just leave our green space. That's all we ask. We don't want a housing development. We don't want you flooding our neighborhood. And that's exactly what it is.
How many homes are out by you, habitat homes?
If we
None.
would put this development on the east side where the 14 and 15 and $17 an hour jobs are, they could save on gas and save money by not driving clear across town and through our neighborhood.
You talk about retention pond, you realize how shallow the rock is?
Do you realize 5 feet down, you hit the rock?
Yes, we understand that.
There have been people that have approached. There is someone right now that will purchase that land right now and keep it as a green wetland. There's a guy right now who will build a pond and put a cabin on it. These they have approached the city to buy that land. They have been asking to buy that land and nobody will sell that land to them.
Well, you can tell them my email is merit@ohio.gov if they would like to reach out to me because they haven't.
You understand? Get it? I will put it
It is
on.
available?
It is available for sale?
You can always reach out. We have not put it up for auction at this point in time.
The city can't do a direct sale without going through the Port Authority. Okay, well, we thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
comments.
time. Would you like a copy of the petition?
Sure.
Well, thank you. We worked hard on it.
In short time.
Yes, we've accomplished a lot in 3 weeks. In 2 weeks. This is the start of our 3rd week. Thank you. Sorry,
You guys
Nancy.
know?
Oh,
I was
yeah.
gonna
You
say,
know
you
me.
don't.
I've got them. I'll get them to you guys on the end.
Okay, so that we can get out of this meeting to get on to, the next one. I would make a motion that, I'm not totally sure how to word this, but that we, close the meeting today and that in the next 2-3 weeks, because I won't be back here in a couple weeks anyway, that you and whoever's gonna work with you, it sounded like on that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is gonna look at maybe plating and what the actual,
I would just
all
say,
that stuff you
have
said.
it say that the administration will work on vetting the development within that area.
There you go, that's my motion, I'll try to get that written down.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's it. Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Nice meeting.
Thank you.
Can you say that for me one more
I
time?
gotta figure out who it is. Yeah, that just that the administration will work on exploring the development or putting together information regarding the development.